All right, well, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Just give us a couple of minutes while we wait for some other people to join, but thank you so much for being here this morning. All right, perfect. Well, again, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Welcome to this virtual tour of the Timken Museum. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started here. Please keep yourselves muted throughout today's presentation. If you do have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat function down here at the bottom of your screen in Zoom. There should be a chat button, and you can use that chat in order to ask your questions, and we'd be happy to address those at the end. If you're joining us over Facebook Live, welcome to you as well. You can do the same and use the comment function there on Facebook in order to ask your question, and we'll be monitoring that and we'll answer those questions at the end of today's tour as well. Lastly, this presentation is being recorded, as I mentioned, and streamed via Facebook Live. If you would like to go back and access this talk or any other talks done by the Timken, you can find all of those on our social media channels, so our YouTube page as well as our Facebook page. Perfect. Well, otherwise, though, I am so excited to have our docent today, Becky, be presenting on America the Beautiful, some gorgeous American artists from the Timken and beyond. So I'll go ahead and pass things along to Becky.
Thank you so much, Samantha, and I want to welcome everyone and thank you for sharing this next hour with me, looking at the paintings in the American Gallery. And the topic of my presentation is called America the Beautiful, because it definitely is. Just wanted to just show those who are not familiar with the Timken Museum. It is located in the center, basically almost the center part of Balboa Park, and it's next to San Diego Museum of Art. You can see it's built on a platform, and it's made of glass, bronze, and travertine marble from Italy. Now, when it was first built, there was a lot of controversy over the design, because the people back then, they wanted something to match the building, to match like the other architectural style in the park. Well, when the foundation said, well, sorry, we'll take it someplace else, they thought, well, maybe it's not so bad after all. It was the Timken Foundations, Mr. Timken and his foundation, they contribute most of the money to the building, and the Putmans donated the art. And the doors were open in October 1965. We all are probably familiar with this picture. The Timken owes its existence to the effort and the generosity of two families, the Timken family and the Putman family. And Mr. Timken, he came from Germany, and he took the American spirit and just really worked hard and invented things. And he worked in a carriage shop. He was a captain in the Union Army during the Civil War. But most of all, he invented the taper roller bearing, which makes the wheels of the buggies ride smoother and easier without friction. He moved here to San Diego, but then went back to help his business back east, but then eventually came here where he passed. His daughter was very influential in using their money and help building the San Diego Museum of Art, and then eventually helping us build the Timken Museum. Now, the Putman family, Henry Putman, was an uncle. He moved to San Diego, and he just was an inventor too. He made clothes ringers, carpet tacks, how to make barbed wire, and he did very well, when he came out here to San Diego. His brother, Albert, went ahead and followed him and worked for his brother, plus also made some of his own inventions. When their father died, he left him with about $250,000. But when Mr. Putman, Henry Putman died, he left his son, Willie, who eventually left then the money to the Putman sisters. There was 3 of them. And that was about $500 million. That's pretty good, I would say. The sisters, they loved to garden and collect art, and they traveled, and they bought a lot of books and art, and they say that their library had over 8,000 books. Um, they, I'm sorry, left him with 5 million. 5 million would be a lot of them, but 5 million is really good. They loved the Russians. Amy, especially the bottom picture, she really loved Russia, anything Russian. And she went to Stanford and learned the language. And she bought a lot of works back in the 1920s from Russia, especially because they were selling it because they didn't really want the art or need the art because they needed to get money, get some cash, and then, rebuild their country. So they sold a lot of the art from Russia to a lot of buyers in America. They were, probably not too social here in San Diego, but when they traveled, they knew a lot of the art critics and the art buyers, and were very well known back then. Um, but over time, they would give their arts or lend them out or give them to like San Diego Museum of Art. But unfortunately, they went ahead, and what happened was one of the directors, him and Amy got into it. And I guess she said, well, forget that. We're going to go ahead and just give everyone else our paintings or send them around the country and the world, but not San Diego Museum of Art. Well, it realized back then, before Amy died, the foundation they made with Mr. Ames, the lawyer, they said, maybe we should try to keep the art here in San Diego. And that was the beginning of the thinking of the Timken Art Museum. Now, we have many artists that I like to talk about that are in our American gallery. But they all have, almost all of them have a couple things in common, which I thought were interesting. The majority of them went to the Dusseldorf School of Fine Arts or the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania School of Fine Arts. Many of them either right away or down the line of their career got into the National Academic of Design. And a lot of them started out with portraits, but then eventually moved to landscapes. They were engravers also first, and that I think really helped them to learn tone, the various degrees of black and white or dark and light. And many of them belong to the Hudson River School. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Hudson River School, because you'll hear me mention it a couple of times. This was kind of an offshadow of the Romanticism style or during that period. It was 19th century, and it was basically, it was not a school, but it was a school of thought. And a lot of the artists lived and painted the Hudson River and everything around it, from the Catskills to the White Mountain to everything in that area. And they really believed in the beauty of America. They looked at the pastoral scenes, they looked at nature, they made it realistic, they made it very detailed. And it was basically a portrait of nature. And they just did majestic, epic, vast, and magnificent wilderness. And it was so good that a lot of people even paid to go, they paid 25 cents to go in and look at these paintings. From this, the style of luminism came, and luminism is like, and you will see this in a lot of the paintings, is how light affects the landscape. And it's basically, and they can do that because of the aerial perspective, making things way far in the back look very far away, being darker and also fuzzy, versus things that are close up that are more detailed, clear, and lighter. So they were able to do this with aerial perspective, and also they were able to conceal their brush strokes, which I feel as a beginner painter is amazing. They made things, tranquil, reflection of the water, and soft, hazy skies. And we see this in the first painting by Albert Bierstadt. He was born in Germany, but his family came to America, but then he went back to Germany and studied at the Dusseldorf in Germany, a school of fine arts. He traveled throughout Europe, and then when he came back with some of his paintings, He was immediately made a full member of the National Academy of Design, which was like a huge achievement. And then he decided, I'm going to travel to the western part of the United States. And he went all over Lake Tahoe, Sierra Nevada, and Yosemite. But this picture, of Yosemite was really what made him a very successful painter. He was probably one of the highest paid painters, and even Congress back then in 1860s paid over $20,000 for one painting, and they purchased a lot more. He was a landscape painter still to this day, and he did command the highest prices. Now, during the Civil War, he really wasn't into that. His brother did go and take pictures, but photographic pictures, but he paid someone to go to the war for him to fill in. And that was really interesting, but I know that my great-grandfather also did that in Germany. He was a professional soldier. So when Bersthoff did paint pictures of the Civil War, it was basically from the photographs of his brother. With those, he sent to Europe. He was successful, and this even increased the people wanting to come to America, and then even Americans wanting to move out west. He even had an audience with Queen Victoria, which I am totally impressed with. His wife died in the 80s, 90s. Unfortunately, and then his studio burned, and then everyone kind of felt like, well, maybe he's too gaudy, oversized, and extravagant. So he just kind of fell out of favor for a little while. Others, but then others felt that his paintings, which are amazing, and I'll show you another one in a few minutes, really helped the conservative movement and establishment of the Yellowstone Park. We see here a very beautiful Yosemite Falls, and I don't know how many of the audience members have seen Yosemite, and it's totally amazing. You see the top waterfalls, and the second waterfalls. I made it up to the one on the bottom because I have a fear of heights, so I thought that was an accomplishment. But you see in the foreground, it's dark. The sun is starting to set. They're setting up camp. They're getting ready for the evening and to rest. Where it would take you a long time to walk from there to the falls. And he's able to use the aerial perspective in the sense that things are a little darker, and also, there's not as much detail. Look at the mountains, how rugged they are. It's not like you could just go ahead and climb up. And just look at the haze. And then you might see a light coming through the clouds. And that's kind of part of the luminescence, how the light is affecting just that area. This is another one. I just thought this was beautiful. There were like hundreds I could have pulled from, but I really just thought this was amazing. The reflection of the sky and the mountains on the water, how dark it is in the foreground, and then in the back, the rugged mountains and the beautiful clouds and sky. It's in the Sierra Mountains, and not too far from Yosemite. So if you have a chance to look at some of his pictures, Albert Bierstock's online, it just will blow your mind away. And others that painted like this. But it was very majestic, and that was one of the hallmarks of the Hudson River School. Okay, here we have Eastman Johnson, and his real name was Jonathan Johnson. But he's kind of known as the most American painters. And even some people will say that he is the American Rembrandt. I do like this picture a lot. He was the co-founder of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. And if you ever go there, you'll see his name inscribed at the entrance. He was born in Maine. He grew up in the Northeast. He helped his dad in businesses, but his father was really very much into politics. And eventually, I think it was during President Taft's time, he got a position, and they all relocated to Washington. So when he was in Washington, he decided he was going to support himself, even though he kind of lived at home. He would do Koran portraits of famous people. And so he was kind of like self-taught. He did study at the Düsseldorf School of Painting later, and he went to Holland and Paris, and he met several of the other people that were in the Hudson River School. But then when he returned to the USA, he says, "Yeah, I think I'm going to go visit my sister." So when he got there in Wisconsin, where she was, she introduced him to this guy, Boga. He was one of the Indians, and they visited his tribes in southern Canada. Well, he really liked that. They were very friendly with him. They were very relaxed. So he painted, and many of them in very realistic, relaxed poses. And they also are online and very, very interesting. So, but when he returned home, he was then elected when he sent those photos to the National Academy of Design. His style here is a very much of a realistic, and we can see that in this picture of the cranberry harvest island of Nantucket. He did marry, and they moved more closer to Maine, and with that, he had they would go up to Nantucket, which he loved. And we see here that his picture there is it's very realistic. He would spend his summer months there. It's wholesome. There's very much nature. He loved it. He loved the Northeast America. Um, his he he would go to different areas, and here we see in this picture the cranberry harvest island of Nantucket took about 2 years to do, and he was constantly making I guess drawings throughout the year or so of different sketches of things he saw, and he put it together with this. Sometimes he would even stay, and he wrote to his friend, he says, I can't leave, that he had the cranberry fever. As we see, this is the North Shore of the island, and it's called the Cliff. Now, I've never been to Nantucket, but I definitely want to go. You see about 40 people or so picking cranberries, and they're mostly women and children and old men. There's a wagon on the right where they're probably loading the cranberries. You see dry grass at the foreground. And then in the back, you see a windmill, which really wasn't there, but it was further down the road. But for some reason, he decided to do it. You could see the spiral, the sea, and that it's getting kind of late in the afternoon. The pickers look very focused on what they're doing, and they're in different groups, whether 2, 3 together, 4, and probably just focused and talking. And you see the color of the clothing, and then here in the center, you see a woman, and she is standing, and everyone is kneeling or sitting and focused on the ground, where she's focused at this little boy on the very right, where he's carrying a baby, and everyone's looking down while she's looking up and forward. Now, they said this in one of my readings. They said, if you look, you can see an X, and that the woman is the center of the X. And I looked and looked, and I think I found it. So I hope you can find it also. She's the center, and then you can see the foreground people kind of bringing up the bottom part of the X, and the people further back behind her are the upper part of the X. Now, he was, since he was in, they would go back to Washington and everything. He loved, he lived in DC. His father worked in near the White House. They lived a few, and behind his house was this picture, and he painted it, and he named it Negro Life at the South. And this was the picture that really made him famous. And as we see, it's a back street kind of behind him, or a little down the alley. We see on the left, there's a dilapidated house. And then a house next to it is in better condition. And then on the left foreground, we see a black man and a light skinned woman. Maybe they're courting, maybe they're talking about the neighbors, who knows? We see a banjo player in the middle. And then we see an adult woman playing with the child. Now, if we look over to the very right edge, we see a white woman with a white dress. She's starting to step over the threshold, like she's entering into their world. And that is Johnson's sister. We Each individual is painted. But if you notice, there's all different skin tones here. And basically, he wanted this was painted before the Civil War, and he wanted to invite the viewer to like think about the contemplation between mixed racial ancestries of those who portrayed. If you look up to the top of the roof, you can barely see it's by the tree, a ladder going from the nice house to the dilapidated house. And, you could say, well, maybe the white man climbed down that to visit his female friends in the evening and night. So basically, and then you can even, it's hard to see, but if you look real close in the tree is the rooster on the white man's side, and then on the roof is the hen on the duplicated or dilapidated house. And that can maybe, raise questions about the mixed racial ancestry. So he put them in the forefront, a lot of these people. He wanted people to think about racial relations, about slavery. And this is the painting that everyone just said, wow, this is amazing. And it really kind of set his family here in America. Another one, I had so many to pick from, but this one I really enjoyed. It's a slave family, and it says a ride to for liberty, the fugitive slaves. Usually when painters, there's a rule of thirds. You put kind of never in the center the object that you're painting, but here he put it in the center, and it takes up the whole canvas almost with as the centerpiece, where he wants you to really notice this. They're riding at dawn to freedom. You see the family in the distance. You see lights, maybe guns firing, or the light bouncing off of Union swords. There's a child in the front of the man he's holding, and then the mom or the woman is holding an infant. But she looks behind, whereas the man is looking forward. Maybe she's concerned that someone is following her, because that would not be good if they were caught. And maybe she's just wondering what she left behind. Now, the moment catches, and he's looking forward to where is he going? What's ahead of him? This captures the moment of the scope of the slavery question, which is starting to be talked about more and more. And he just helped with these pictures elevate slavery to the national debate. It's very dusky, like the morning, the dawn. You can see the figures, but yet you can't see specific details of the figures. Now, our next artist was Thomas Birch. He was born in America, but he was born in England and moved to America. He would assist his fathers as an engraver and painter of portraits. They all seem to start out with portraits, but they kind of end up with landscapes. I guess him and his father were pretty good, so they had a series, like a magazine, they called Birch's View of Philadelphia. And they also had New York and other areas. And this was, I think, pretty successful because many people had subscriptions, including President Madison and Vice President Thomas Jefferson. But as he was developing his technique, he went ahead and he liked to paint landscapes, but they were mostly of snow, and it had a lot of human activity, like skaters or skiers, and that type. But then with time, he kind of got involved with the naval engagements, especially those in 1812. And he established him with these pictures as America's Marine fortress. Um, he was sought after by boat owners who saw their boats that were in these battles and they won, and by officers who also were in these battles. Uh, we see here, it's the ship is the main focus. Your eye catches it. Um, the mast is torn, the mainsail, the sails, and everything is damaged. The ship could be on rocks, or maybe the captain's a little concerned that he may not have enough sail to avoid the rocks. And so the crew are loading a lifeboat over the stern. We see that there's a boat on our right, a side wheeler, on our left, coming to the rescue. And then we see another boat on our right, hoping to save and help this crew. There's a rugged coastline, and then there's a town with a lighthouse or a harbor. Usually what he did, Mr. Birch did, he would like take this and he would paint this that is very much in distress, that's very active. The waves are huge. You can see the water. If anything, when I first look at it, I'm thinking, yeah, oh my gosh, those poor people were probably terrified. Plus, you want to take your Dramamine before one, you look at the picture or you get on that boat, because I would have definitely been ill. It's just a magnificent picture, and there's a lot of energy and drama there. And I just think it's just very well done. Now, this young man, or this man, is Fitzhugh Lane, was his first name. Now, with time, what had happened, he didn't like his name. It was originally Nathaniel Rogers, but he did not want to be, I guess, considered recognized with the other Nathaniel Rogers. So he made it Fitzhugh Lane. And so with time, he then, we're not for sure why, but he converted it over to Fitzhenry Lane. He was born in Massachusetts. He had developed, unfortunately, infantile polio, which really was partial paralysis in his legs. He was known to move around with crutches. Now, his family at that time didn't know it was infantile polio, but they thought he became paralyzed because of eating tomatoes. He did have, I think he helped his father with shoemaking and everything, but he had just a love of the art and of the marine life and of art. And so he lived near the ocean, so he was, had opportunities to draw. He became apprentice of Mr. Pendleton. Now, he could not afford to go to Europe, but they felt that Mr. Pendleton gave his students the training like that of the Europe's fine art schools. He would have them grain their stones. Now, he would make them do a lot of things like grain the stones to make the flat, the surface. And then after time, they would have the students copy certain compositions with crayons on the limestone. And then over time, they can then copy their work on the limestone. He was active in civil life. He traveled extensively. He taught the students, but unfortunately, he had a bad fall and died of a stroke or a heart attack. His style is very of a nautical subject matter, which we can see here. And this is Castine Harbor and Town in Maine. He loved going up there. And in fact, he had a friend who would go with him as he hiked along the shore and the mountains there. And he was very much interested in the nautical subject matter. And he did really well with very accurate detail. As we see the expansive sky, the sun coming up, the darkness, and then the light. And it's just, and then in the background, the town of Castine. He paid a lot of attention to the light and dark, and he was also very much into luminescence. I saw a picture of this one in one of his other works, and it's this picture, but it has a foreground of grass and ground and trees and a lot of vegetation. So he did draw, and then he did draw these pictures in different ways. Not only would he draw a still, very calming, relaxing ocean scene, but he would draw them very with dramatic and storms and a lot of that also. Uh, he realized he was a better artist than shoemaker, and his father was a sailmaker, so he was around ships most of the time, and he did belong to the Hudson River School. But however, there was a lot of disagreement with that because they just felt that maybe it just wasn't as vast and as dramatic and majestic. So there was a lot of disagreement about whether or not he should be a part of this schooling. But we see here, it's really interesting. He painted this picture, and for a side note, he sold it to Mr. Noah Birch. And when I was reading, I just thought it was so interesting. They said Mr. Noah Birch was a fantastic person, an amazing man. So I, of course, needed to know more. So Mr. Birch, he was either going to be an artist or he was going to be a writer. Well, he decided to be a writer. And as he went across country, he did a lot of writings about the country and then lived in California for a while. But eventually, after his wife and son died, he moved back east and he moved to DC. Well, the thing about him was he became very, very good friends with Abraham Lincoln and his family, the Lincoln family. And he would attend their dinners and travel with them and everything. But one day he was supposed to go to the theater with them, but he had such a bad cold that he was unable to. And that was the day and the theater and the time when President Lincoln was shot and died later. So, who knows what would have happened if he had went. When Mr. Birch did die, he donated it to the Library of Castine. So we would see that if we go there. Now, the Mr. Martin Johnson Heath. I really like this. He was born in Pennsylvania. He traveled abroad. He was a portraitist once again and landscapes, but he really loved still lifes, flowers, and hummingbirds. When he did paint landscapes, it was basically salt marshes, and he met many famous Hudson River schools artists, and he became very professionally and socially involved with them. When he did his still lifes, his landscapes, they were mostly horizontal expanses with very subdued, calm scenery, small haystacks with small figures, instead of like the majestic mountain waterfalls and valleys. He was very much a luminous painter, and especially that is seen in his landmarsh paintings. He married and then he moved to St. Augustine, where Florida. He traveled a lot to South America. He loved painting the birds and lush foliage. And later he started painting not only orchids, but also the magnolia blossoms. And here we have a beautiful, the magnolia blossom. And it shows the blossom of the magnolia, the beautiful white magnolia facing to the right. You can see where it's been cut from the flower, the stem. And you see the very beautiful leathery light green petals. And the flower is just barely open. It's sitting on like an edge of a table or a desk, and covered with soft red velvet that's coming from the right. You can just see how, with the smooth texture uh, of the velvet, and how beautiful it is. There are other paintings. He really loved doing this that show maybe the flower facing left, and then there's some that are in the blue velvet instead of red. And the one on the blue velvet is really what made him um, helped make his famous. Plus, there was a stamp after he died in 1945 they made of him to honor him, and it was the magnolia on blue velvet. So his art was appreciated, and it is very beautiful. Uh, it's interesting because even though he fell out of favor, he did become back in favor. And you could find, I thought it was interesting, his works can be found on Becky's in antique stores, estate sales, and rummage sales. And they found even one covering the hole in the wall in Indiana. Uh, when I lived in Indiana, I never saw those things at estate sale, but I really wasn't looking. He just has so many beautiful pictures. And this is one that he painted when he was in Brazil. And it's just beautiful, the orchid and the three hummingbirds. And he has so many like those that it's just amazing. He's just beautiful. And you see again the light in the background coming through maybe the forest or the jungle of that area. Now, John Petto, he was from Pennsylvania, and he studied at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. And he would submit his paintings regularly. But he's kind of, I would say, he's kind of like maybe a little bit of a bohemian. He worked, but he just didn't really. He did other things too. I don't think that was just like high priority in his life. He in his life, they took orders. He played the cornet at rival meetings. He sold paintings to tourists, and he basically developed his style like him and other people with the, let's see, it is called Trump Lloyd style. And what that means is that it aims to deceive the viewer into mistaking the painted objects as reality. So he would do that by hanging the objects off the picture or cut them off, and he used actual size. Here we see, like with Trump Lloyd, a suggestion of what it was like. I saw that and like, whoa. And then I realized the painting, that was not anyone coming out of the painting, but that it was, the painting was part of the painting. And that was really interesting. But here, so sorry. So here we have, when I first saw this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this reflects my life. Very disorganized, kind of putting things wherever, and just very disorganized. But luckily, the last week I did do a lot of spring cleaning, and it looks a lot better. But here we have this painting. He would always paint and arrange objects. Like ordinary things like pistols or horseshoes or keys, books, and they were mostly worn or less expensive. And he used the soft light, and you see here you have a lot of the blue and the orange, the complementary colors, the somber mood. These books are on the edge of the table. We can see the shadows from the tablecloth. They're torn, they're worn, they're disheveled. And then we have a candle that is just about it's not lit, but maybe half used, like life is like half over. And I thought I did like this. I really enjoyed it. And then this is another painting of his. Once again, he has the candle. It looks like it may fall. A feather for writing, books, and other things just kind of hung up on, you know, they look very real and kind of hung up underneath the shelf. Uh, Very interesting. And you see the shadows and the lines, some are horizontal, the verticals, and even the diagonals. Our last but not least, and you notice he's the only one of the self-portrait of John Singleton Copley. Now, I had the pictures of the other artists, but it was just too many slides, and I thought, so I got rid of them. But when I came to him, I just thought, I can't get rid of him. He's a nice looking man, and I just thought I'd give us an opportunity just to look at that, and that is his self-portrait. He, basically, his family, his mother sold tobacco when he was young. He, unfortunately, his father died, and then his mother married a man called Mr. Pelham. And he was really a good thing for John Singleton's Copley's life. Mr. Pelham, he was an engraver. Once again, he would teach engraving, painting, manners, dancing, and reading French and other polite skills. Now, I think we could use that today. He then also learned from his, not only those skills, but he over time learned and mostly did portraits because that was the demand. And he really enjoyed doing that, but he wanted to, he became very good at this. And he would go and find costumes and buy them. Maybe I don't think they had rummage sales back then, but he would find them and then he would dress the people in that costumes and put them in different positions. And they really liked that. So he was in demand. He did send some paintings, portraits back east, and he had his friend Benjamin West, who lived in London. And Benjamin would say, you need to come here. You need to study here. What are you doing in America? You need to go to school here. Well, he wanted to go to school, but he didn't want to, he was making good money. And one of the people he painted was and this is a lovely picture. He wanted to, he painted her, but we'll come back to her brother. He also made a portrait of, and his brother was just really liked it that he got him to go to New York City. And he was so busy in Boston that he just didn't have time for New York City, but eventually went, and he had over 17 people who wanted his portrait painting. And one of them was Mrs. Gage. And so with that, he did send, I think he sent this picture back, and they just were, oh my gosh, he is amazing. You need to come to Europe. But he still wanted, his family was there, but what happened was, it's just like today. If you have different political beliefs, people don't always like that, and they may change the way they do business. Well, that's what happened to him. He was raised a loyalist, but his wife was from a very wealthy family, and I think it was the East India Tea Company her father owned, or was a part of it, extensively a part of it. And they were strong loyalists. Well, he just, unfortunately, people didn't like that. And so his commissions dropped, and his father had tea on some ships. I guess there was over 300 barrels of tea on these ships. And his father, 100 of those was his father-in-law's tea. And what they did, what we probably all know, the Boston Tea Party, and his father-in-law's tea ended up in the water. His family was threatened, his wife was threatened, his father-in-law was threatened, and they even came to his house. He had a guest, a loyalist guest, and before they came, the people that were rioting, he encouraged his guests to stay, but the guests said, no, I can't. Well, it's kind of a good thing he left, because these people that came, they were going to burn his house down if he didn't give the guest over, and he was just appalled. So this was kind of a way to say, maybe I might just have to leave. And so he went to Europe. There he went ahead and he traveled all over. He went, taught himself. He went and saw all the artists and learned from them. And they kind of compared him to Titan and Van Dyke and Rubens. He was a very hard worker, and he had over 300 paintings, even up to the end of his life. He painted constantly. We see here, there was another thing. He painted in oils, but he pioneered in pastels. And so he needed some pastel crayons. So he asked the Swiss painter to send him Swiss crayons for drawing portraits. Well, the Swiss painter thought, why should I send you that? And he replied that, no, not in quotes, not so remote a corner of the globe as New England should have any demand for the necessary utensils for practicing the fine arts. By assuring him that America, which has been a seat of war and desolation, would dare hope one day to become a school of fine arts. So he's the Swiss artist, like, why should I send you these pastel crayons? Mr. Copley, as we know, he in poor health, and then the Napoleon Wars, there was money that he just wasn't making the money as he got older. He had a property on Beacon Hill, and it was sold, but he wasn't told when it was sold to these people that they were going to put this huge, it was really ready to be used and built, these huge civic buildings. So he thought he lost a lot of money. He was very mad about it. They said that he died broke, and that when he was alive, he was moody and depressed. But they did commemorate a stamp for him in 1965. And you may have also heard of the Boston Copley Square or Copley Square Hotel or Copley Plaza. So here we see one of his pictures. When he did go to New York City, he had 17 people that he wanted to paint for in a few months. And after he was there in 3 days, here comes Mrs. Thomas Gage. Well, he painted her in like a 3/4 portrait. He felt with her that she was beyond compare the best lady portrait he'd ever drew. She was well known by the society. She was very charming. She was called Betches by the British officer. She was raised as a loyalist, and she married Thomas Gage, who was the commander-in-chief of the British forces in North America. Now, he was before the war, but things were starting to get kind of started. The war, there was starting to be riots here, and things were becoming unsettled. So with all of that and those changes coming, England went ahead and relieved him of his duty and sent other generals there. However, some claim that she betrayed military information that she received from her husband and given it to the Patriots, because God forbid, she did not want her husband involved in hurting or killing any of her country people. They had 11 children. She never returned to the U.S., and she died when she was in her 90s. Many people that saw this portrait, I'll kind of jump ahead, they didn't really like it at first, because they felt that she, being the woman that she was, the general's wife that was in charge, she should be in more glamorous clothes. But yeah, and they didn't think it was very favorable of hers. But yet they decided they would honor this piece of art as art. She, as you see here, is a 3/4 of a portrait. She's kind of leaning on a couch, like maybe a velvet couch, and she's looking away, kind of thinking. And they thought, well, the type of woman she was is probably what she was thinking was more all intellectual thoughts and maybe how to have peace in the world or things like that. But when I look at her, she, to me, is thinking, okay, what am I going to have for dinner? Did the laundry get done by the maids? Oh, these kids are killing me. I think she's probably was thinking things like this. She is uncorseted. Oh my, that's not nice and good. She has an iridescent rose silk habit, or it's like a loosely um, clothing. It's kind of like a mock or some sort, but um, it has a lace trim kind of undergarment, and you see her belt. She has a belt that is very beautiful and golden and trimmed. Um, it's it's embroidery and everything. She has a nice brooch right by her bust. And if you think the hat on her head, she never visited Turkey, but her father was Turkish and her mother was Greek. And what they did was um, um, at that time, it became very popular. People were enchanted by the way they dressed, the way that people in Turkey lived, and the way they dressed, and they just thought it was enchanting, exotic. And so we see this drapery over her head with some pearls. Um, you see here that I was going to say something and I forgot, but it's just she's just a very beautiful, and I can see why that really also helped his career. This is her husband, and he is Mr. Gage. He was the general, and he also received his in when he was in Boston, his portrait. He was a general for the British Army in America, and I already shared with you some of the things that about his life. Now, last but not least is John Singleton's Copley picture of Paul Revere, which I think is really interesting because Paul Revere was not only a silversmith, which we see him holding like maybe a teapot or some bowl in his hand. He was an engraver, he was a colonist, and he was very much a patriot. And here he is, just a regular man. He doesn't have his wig on, he's clean shaven, and it's like he's contemplating his life also. He was very much a part. He was one of the men who went on the boats and threw the tea into the water. He was part of the Boston Tea Party. And it's interesting because I kind of wonder if Copley knew that Paul Revere did that. Because remember, Copley's father-in-law, 100 barrels of that tea was his. So I kind of have a feeling they just didn't really connect the dots, and I hope that is true. Also, Paul Revere was he alerted the colonial militia in 1775 to the approaching British forces. We have the dark background in contrast to his white shirt. And he's kind of like I said, his hand is over his chin. He's kind of contemplating about the future, maybe the future of America. I just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Christina and everyone at the Timken, and especially thank you to Samantha for helping me with this presentation. Have an amazing day.
Thank you so much, Becky. What a great presentation. Thank you so much. Just a virtual round of applause. If there are any questions from anyone, I'd be happy to take those now. Like I said, you can put them in the chat. while you may be typing, I'll just go ahead and mention, as I mentioned at the top of this presentation, this is being recorded and will be posted to our social media once finished. So if you did want to go back and check out this presentation or any previous ones done by the Timken, please feel free to go to our Facebook or our YouTube channel to check those out. And if you wanted any information on any upcoming virtual tours being put on by the Timken, please check out our website and you can find the information for those there. But I don't see any questions in the chat. So thank you so much again, Becky. What a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much for taking the time this morning. And thank you so much to everyone who joined us. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.